Welcome back, guys. I'm excited to share another episode of Underground Science and the content that we're about to discuss because it's pretty cool now. I'm noticing it with a little more clarity we've talked about in the past. So this is going to kind of build on. Let me play this. This is piano music, music for the soul. It's the channel. I don't know if it's their music. It doesn't say whose it is, so if it's someone else's, I don't know. Anyway, so I was looking. Did I start at the beginning? Yeah. Okay. So I got an hour. Okay. I was looking around North America, just kind of thinking about things. I don't know why exactly. And I was just like, huh. I know that an Eddie was on. Let me find this. On North America at the position of Michigan, centered on Michigan. Why is that not opening? There we go. There was this going on, an eddy over here, current coming down over here this way, southward to the west of the Rockies. And mind you, this current, as we're going to discuss, runs into other pressures and bends along it with regard to the formation of the Rockies, where the current running along British Columbia into Washington State area is running along the boundary of an eddy centered on Hudson Bay. So we've got an eddy centered on Hudson Bay, an eddy centered on Michigan that extends out to pretty much the boundary of Lake Superior and the Appalachians and to the beginning of the Mississippi Delta here. And then there's another eddy over here at Colorado Plateau, another eddy at Triple Junction, but really these three are like the main eddies that are at least like most apparent, but there's a lot of things going on that I'm noticing that we're going to talk about. So the first thing is that even though there's an eddy here, it seems that what was going on was some of it flowed inward towards the center, but some of it just exhausted this way in a way where like this area kind of formed like a bladder that filled and then exhausted, it seems, maybe, possibly, which is why it's shaped like it is kind of what I was thinking. Where the hand of Michigan is related to currents coming in from over up north in Canada, across that way, indenting here. So we're just going to look around at things. This doesn't seem all that exciting so far. I admit, this image, like, okay, the line, the general line. Really, I started down here and I drew through this, like, to actually go between, in the Mississippi Delta, between it, and drew a line and just like extended it, and I said, okay, well, it looks like it's generally pointing at this lake, so maybe there's a relationship there. So that's where I started, is kind of from there, thinking about places where flows were directed in North America related to other aspects, such as the eddies centered on Michigan, Hudson Bay, and Colorado Plateau. Came across some interesting relationships. The first image shows a relationship between the bladder shaped Lake Michigan and the Mississippi Delta, which is this width here, like the lighter color area, not just the Mississippi River, but the Delta, where it once was an entire river, flowed this width that exhausted from over here, that exhausted from over here at the eddy that was centered here. And its outlet, so shaped like Michigan and Lake Michigan, or bladder-shaped Lake Michigan in the Mississippi Delta, and its outlet, suggestive is what I'm getting at, that an outlet from this eddy went through specifically the Mississippi Delta region. Instead of like over here or over here, it exited this way and added to the flow rate here particularly, and not over here and over here. So it made this region more of the delta than other regions because it was adding flow rate across that stretch in a relatively channeled high velocity way with coming out of this eddy, because it's essentially like a quasar, like a mission, like a gamma ray burst, like something that's like a jet stream, a mission from a nucleus eddy with a central nucleus, a mission of a beam. Okay, and then I go on to say, to the Gulf where it eddied at Chicxulub. So mind you, this flow is coming out this way, and this is over here, like pushed in here. So it's really going to Chicxulub, which, like, this boundary, maybe, now that I think about it, was literally over here. This boundary up here, like, folded in there. Literally folded in, where it unfolded. Like, this used to go more across this way, and now it goes down because it actually unraveled like that to a point where it created like knuckles down this way. But so this was pointing at Chicxulub because this was central to the formation of Chicxulub, while another current was flowing over this way, going around here, spiraling in at the Gulf, because there was pressure over here, pressure over here, so basically it eddied at the Gulf until it compressed so much energy that it supernovaed, like the system. Like this eddy is not just an eddy, it's like a system, like a planet, like a galaxy. It behaves in ways that are much more cosmic than just like a whirlpool. And it caused Chicxulub in an abrupt way, where this eddy abruptly, spontaneously had a burst of energy output because it was compacting, overwhelm, because of the amount of buildup that it could no longer, as it built up, boom, it flows outward. But it doesn't casually overwhelm the pressures flowing into it that are building it up. At some point, it breaks through in an explosive way in the right circumstances, which Chicxulub had, because it was a major eddy that was essentially one of the critical driving forces of the actual fracturing of the crust at the KT boundary that allowed for the crust to freely move apart from other segments of continental crust, to freely move apart from one another, and new oceanic crust to fill in between as the Earth expanded to a new radius. Which also happened with the global flood, which dates from 541 million years geologically to the Holocene. Okay, so this process we're looking at is including details going all the way back to then. Okay, so probably like Cretaceous seaway and things are related to these currents that we're going to be looking at. Okay, so we see that, but if we continue this path, so if I just go like this, like generally center this way, so like maybe like around here, go this way, and then I scroll up and go there, but then I just continue. So I'm like looking across the Lake Michigan and just hit it. I don't know where that was up here. So we're extending this line pretty much, seeing what else it goes to, and it goes to this circular segment. So then I said the second image, if we continue the same line, it points generally to the outer center, like the edge of a nucleus region, like we were just talking about here, of the circular section of Hudson Bay, and demonstrating the outflow from the eddy. So this eddy having an outflow here. Why does it have an outflow here? Because there's a bigger eddy here applying a pressure into this eddy, which is then applying a pressure into the general like eddy itself, like through the eddy in a way where it then propagates a jet stream out of the eddy through, but by this eddy interacting with this eddy, jet stream out, specifically as a function though of the position of this boundary, and down here to that was once going to Chicxulub, which was folded in over here. So that's another thing that I'm like, okay, maybe I can kind of just like keep doing this. And I'm like, well, there's another line here, like Lake Superior. So if we continue this same line of reasoning, or the straight section of Lake Superior as done in the third image, here, straight section, extends a line, and extend a line, it points to the center. So if we just take the straight portion, extend a line in both directions, it points to the center or the boundary. I drew it as a boundary here. It was kind of dependent like on exactly, like if I do here like and go right to the center over here, it really does go right through this point in a way that looks like maybe the center is actually more related to the pointiness this. But if we like consider this boundary over here might be relevant and draw a line from it along the boundary, the outer edge more so than like if we just take it over to this boundary, it brings it over here. But now we're like out of this because we're to the center over here. So if we just take it to the edge of this circle, like there's an outer, the structure of an ammonite pretty much here, with a inner section, inner circle, a nucleus with a outer ring pretty much. This intersection, if we just bring it over here and just look over here, okay, it's still a little off of there. Let's see what it takes to get there. A little further. In essence, my thought is this is generally related to the Hudson Bay, or not to the Colorado Plateau. This straight line, this relationship is generally related. Remind you, there's a current coming out here in this physical location that's upwelling this way, running into these currents over here though, and bending off and going this way, where it then eddies here, continues through, interacts with this current, eddying, and this current down here. This current coming through here, goes through here, through here, through here, across here. So maybe that one's not actually related to Colorado Plateau as much as one from Lake Superior. This also reminds me of one of my videos on what is it? Play this. It's like creatures or something. Beings of the earth. Videos. This reminds me of the Native American stories. So, like, these are instances here. Like, the tortoise and the bird is actually in the terrain. Snakes on a Plane is talking about North America snakes. The Birdman is talking about the same area. And so on. Dragon, there's a dragon. Other things from the womb of Mother Earth and the Florida panther is all talking about a panther. You can kind of see it there. Let's see if I can find them. Where are those in this? Shapes? Well, there's Odin. Odin's Ravens. Not the best one. Not the best one. Not the not the best one. I don't know. Here's Nidhogg. Odin, Nidhogg, all these things relating the actual, like, Ragnarok story to the terrains, and you know, yeah, that looks related. Like, there's actual relationships here. Same though goes for this Native American one, which is somewhere in here. Possibly, I don't think so. Probably this one. This is it. A battle between Frost and Whirlwind. Possibly Seneca creation myth. These are related. This one's talking, I believe, my interpretation is it's very focused on the eddy located at Michigan, where this one talks about the eddy located at Michigan pretty much, but its interaction with the Colorado Plateau. So, I would say that's interesting that we're kind of seeing this relationship here where we can draw like an actual line along this path and it goes to the nucleus, and then that current, imagine there's a current flowing in this way and there's another current over here, but it's not just flowing this way, it's also like flowing in layers with pressure into those layers essentially. So like imagine this current goes into that, it doesn't just like flow into it easily if there's enough pressure out here, so it essentially turns around, but then there's pressure over here, so it can't really go up this way. And then there's pressure coming this way, so it can't really go back, but it goes back, like, indirectly and returns to the inlet path more directly and just eddies here, essentially, forming an ammonite structure in the Colorado Plateau, literally. And in the process, probably, I wouldn't be surprised, this eddy is physically stripping the Appalachians of material, taking it and putting it over here because the whole Navajo sandstone is deposits from the Appalachians. Not my interpretation, that's what the detrital zircons indicate. Because there was an eddy over here that was transporting material over there. Some of it went this way over here and went this way, but some of it maybe just went boom, boop, done kind of thing. More of a direct path, but still seeded off of this eddy that maybe was going this way. I'm not sure if I can't remember, honestly. There's also another eddy here, by the way, centered on the Finger Lakes, which we will come back to now I look at them. Although it's a little different, it's subtle, it's like very recessive as I've come to begin to use the term like this. This shallogram has a dominant ammonite that actually took form that we see as a fossil. These are all etched by water currents, shaped by water currents. The grains are moved by water currents. Everything about these stones is related to the flood that we're talking about. And in this instance, it formed a dominant eddy. An eddy is what happens here. An eddy forms, just like we're talking about, but in a fractal way where it etches into the stone here, like so. But a recessive ammonite forms out of here, where there's literally a current flow out of the stone here that returns to the stone over here, flows this way, and generally propagates energy this way, creating an actual boundary up here, influencing this one's to like create this. Like, it's not in this path, it should be like here. If there's some random indentation like relative to this, it would make more sense to be like centered, but it's actually centered from this one relative to here, which then has this chakra as like its inner like boundary, like over here, opposite over here, this chakra essentially is it like in the line, even though it's like recessed into the stone. And then there's another lobe here that's subtler, another segment here, so like that way, and then like creating a path like this, but in a pixelated, fractal, weird way that exposes really fundamental aspects of reality. This is going on over here. Recessive ammonite. So there's looking at it, there's one ammonite. Like, in terms of on the scale of the stone. And looking at, like, here. There's like one eddy that was forming here, generally. Centered on Hudson Bay, and like Michigan is tiny. It's a hello, my, but it's centered on Hudson Bay here. Michigan's on its boundary, probably largely. Just maybe it's not circular because it's more of like a ammonite shape that extends over here. Flows in this way, down this way, along here, in, down, around here. Some of it goes out this way, some of it continues, cuts through here, physically through this channel, along here. Some of it gets out this way, goes along here, along this boundary, across here, And this is no casual current. This is a major world-changing, shaping current that is globally traceable. Okay. But it goes this way, and some of it, though, wraps around, goes back over here. Like so, basically up through here and around, but that leads to a jet stream going out here, basically, and out this way. Some of it goes this way, some of it goes this way. Other currents coming out this way. Other currents end up going through here as well. Although that might be going this way. And undercurrents in the magnetic anomaly map, I think they go this way, undercurrents. But it may be overcurrents going the opposite way in this area. On the surface, under the continental crust, and like down below at that depth, the undercurrents were going this way through here, cutting this apart in the magnetic anomaly map. That's why I interpret from the magnetic anomaly map this thing. By basically a current going through here around this segment, but some of it branching off and going that way. Some of it branching off and going this way, down here, going down here. While swirling around here, some of it goes down that way. While swirling around here, some of it goes that way. While swirling around here, some of it goes this way. This is actually a path that current flowed on the surface as well. Which makes me wonder if this is all through the crust in a way where it's ultimately effectively on the surface at some point. It's hard to say sometimes if I am truly mistaken. I always remind myself that this structure does not visibly appear in Pakistan. So clearly there's under the surface currents that are just through. It's probably just through. Like all of it was in flux. At least like cracks and paths that it was getting through like this. Like large segments of continental crust probably had like cores that were more unaffected, but like the underlayer had stuff flow underneath it and then stuff above it, so it got kind of influenced by currents above and below, but not as through as the places where it's actually cutting through. Kind of like fractures in rocks that are erosively caused by water cutting through. Okay, so let's keep going. Then I noticed this pressure point thing, which I've thought about before. If we go back here, like there's a physical indentation in the Rockies. Like they could, let's just say, they could go more linearly across, like this, but all the way across, just a line. But they are indented here to this point, right there, right to this exact point. And if we look up here, this generally points there. This generally points there, including like things like here. And if we look around, like here, there's even another boundary. So there's like two parallel boundaries, one inner one here, and then an outer one over here that goes out that way. And then really seems like the inner one maybe like goes over, it's hard to say, but the outer one seems to generally go over here to like around like these little corner possible locations. Because essentially, as we go up here, like, this is a straight line relatively across. This is a straight line. Where are we looking at? I need to get the right angle. Here we go. So straight line. Straight line. So if we take this straight line here and this one and say, okay, that kind of looks like a polygon, and this kind of looks like a corner of a polygon. So let's just like boop, boop, boop. Kind of connect up with some fadedness over to that, maybe, but connecting up to this straight line. So then we got boop, 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 another straight line, boop. And if we just kind of look at it, well, that's not really like a good polygon. Let's say this also looks kind of like a corner, although that might be a little too far. It's probably multiple things, but essentially I ended up saying like maybe around like opposite, like here, cross this way, maybe like a boundary here to a polygon across that then generally was eroded into in this area. So there was a more polygonal type boundary that could have been forming that then had the Hudson Bay area erode into it. But this polygon with this like flame thing, like with a center, so that's what this is. Polygon, pressure points, polygon applying pressure through this region in a flame-like shape. So that would suggest, as I mentioned here, there's a eddy at the Hudson Bay, but there's a smaller recessive eddy here, like the recessive ammonite concept, that was forming the same structure, just smaller, so it was not as potent. So basically, its influence on the terrain was overwhelmed by the eddy at Hudson Bay that made this area more look like an actual ammonite almost, with this like outer segment here, like the mass of an ammonite that then spirals into a more like thinner center, like say, let's find an example. Like this one's a good example just for like the mass of an ammonite. The way it even segments over here from this internal segment. Mass, like there can be a mass, a region of a material that got compacted together and shaped by the flows to a point where it becomes like a mass. So that's kind of what I picture these, like the end of an ammonite that spirals into a center and thins to a point where it becomes a lake or a bay, a bay, sorry, and makes the Hudson Bay. So it looks more dominant, whereas this one is just kind of a polygon. But if we look at Hudson Bay, like it's also kind of a polygon. Like it's got this side here, like over this way, polygonal sides over here, kind of like straight line over here, this line across there, extra segment over there. Generally polygonal. Like if we look at the North American geology map, the Canadian Shield, like this, whatever. Like it's polygonal, especially here, looking kind of starfish-like, like pointy polygonal. Okay, so let me just read this. It appears to have a core region where a recessive eddy, so my suggestion is there's a large eddy, there's a small eddy that was forming contained between the nucleus, the core of the Hudson Bay eddy, and the outer edge. So mind you, this boundary is the outer edge of this eddy, so there's an eddy's outer boundary, inner boundary here, outer boundary here, where this larger eddy's inner boundary is the far side of this polygon, and then this one's outer boundary is the opposite, although it's a little like sideways, like wedged, like it's kind of wedged, like this. Kind of crammed in there because probably currents over here pushing it over that way, keeping this body of eddy in this location. So there's an eddy here. Between the resistance of the center nucleus region of the Hudson Bay eddy over North America and the resistance of the outer boundary of the whole. So this system also wholly within the boundaries of the Hudson Bay eddy may be suggestive of some kind of either electron to the Hudson Bay's nucleus, or some kind of proton of the nucleus. Like it's, here's a proton, maybe there's another eddy, maybe another one somewhere, I don't know. That then like together, kind of like Africa. If we look at Africa, it has like a polygon down here. Polygons like here. Some polygons down here, here, like just a bunch of polygons, generally approaching hexagons in appearance. I don't know if they are. With a kind of triangular one down here, and a diamond type one over here, so there's different shapes too. But these things are all over the place, and they're fractal representations of something in a chemistry sense, atomic. See periodic table of currents episodes for more details on what the hell I'm talking about, where we discuss polygons in which currents can flow, where eddies that form within the container of the polygon are protons, and then mounds that those eddies induce within the container are neutrons, and this can stably form different variations. But if it forms too many protons, too many eddies altogether, then it will push apart the atom and break it, basically, because it's just a bunch of eddies with no like backstops. Like for example, here's an eddy, here's a neutron, literally. And the eddy isn't really there, so it maybe weighs less, little less, not like that much less. Just enough less where it's like a proton versus a neutron. And the water that was once there is basically in this like electron cloud. I mean, there's an eddy over here. It's centered on Bermuda that happened, that flowed out this way, ran into resistance of another current, flowed down this way, ran into resistance, flowed this way, and cycled here, especially like down here, like pushing into this boundary low. It didn't like stop here. Pushing into this boundary. But then there's an eddy there. That eddy then shoots off a current this way. Some of it goes off this way and doesn't, because there's an eddy here, it's not able to like push through this way. And so it deflects off of this eddy, goes up this way along the boundary of the Appalachians because they provide resistance. This current does not reach over here with its pressure as easily because there's a mound, like I was kind of mentioning in here, where the container is not broken because there's a mound at times. That kind of thing was generally happening where this flow was allowed to go this way and caused to deflect off of that between the eddy out here because there's a pressure out here, eddy here. This current comes out this way, goes around and up this way and out down here, and then finally exits where it's actually going in the direction of the eddy. So it like joins the eddy. This one, it basically is joining, and then up here has much more joined. It's more one with the flow. Over here it's more in a transitional region where they're interacting, creating the Carolina Bays, which is why they all are east and south of this feature, and this feature itself has the shape of a Carolina Bay because it spawned them, seeded them like a oak tree giving birth to an oak tree, or a rabbit giving birth to a rabbit. A large scale Carolina Bay giving birth to a bunch of small scale Carolina Bays, because the circumstances of this process allowed for it, which is why they point at Michigan, because they're related to this eddy. It's essentially driving current out from it in a way where it even directs the angle that the base formed at over here. Okay. Then, so we just see this, but then there's another one that's bigger. So this one, we can kind of see it there, like a flame shape extending out there this way. And notice this one's boundary is actually the same boundary as the structure, but that happens relative to the Hudson Bay. So instead of being relative to this polygon, we go over a little bit right here relative to here, and we see the same thing. We see this boundary, we see here this boundary, we see another boundary over here, then that way, out that way. So we've got this other thing, but if we turn it at this way, this is the angle that I found it very curious. This way, suddenly we see like something different. Like we see one here, which I didn't even realize I was talking about a different one. That's how crazy it is. There's so many of them like overlapping one another, which relates to how Australia got its ammonite shape with all these like circles, things going on in here overlapping one another. as it spirals out this energy. There was a core with generally a wall and a larger outer shell here that then had current get in within the outer shell and create eddies to then shape the generally circular shell and circular nucleus to be an ammonite shape, which then the decay material out of this ammonite shape removed by this process came out this way and went over here, which was also over here. I had to like it folded open like that kind of thing. Like it was boop. Well, I guess wrong way. Boop. So a point that was there is then over here, but also folded out. So it moved out, and up. Oops. Out and up. So when it was over here, it had a jet stream going out this way. But then because it moved out and up, it rotated. The jet stream now is pointing this way, creating this trident structure that then eroded here. But this was happening underneath North America before the Earth expanded, where that point was over here, where a jet stream was coming out of this way, where this decay material was from the decay of the nucleus of Australia, because all these currents were converging at Australia at a time. That decay product moved over here, where all this stuff was happening with a jet stream going up the boundary of North America this way, cutting in here, through here, up here, transporting materials, pushing it into Alaska, British Columbia, and the Northwest Pacific region here, like Vancouver Island. And accreting material from down here in this region where the jet stream was pushing physical chunks of material like Baja California material up this way to be deposited up here, and then create a very curious what in the hell happened question in geology that has been studied in depth. Baja, BC is a anomaly, dudes. And it's just epic too. It is so cool. The details of Baja, BC, so cool. Kudos, Nick Zender, Basil Tikoff, Jerome Lessman, and everyone else involved. Sorry guys, I really don't know who actually are the originators and maybe would be the most merited people to reference in that moment. Forget his name, the guy that passed away, Merle Beck. He's definitely probably the number one name in that field, but at least in its infancy and development. Modern times, I don't know. Certainly not anymore, unfortunately. I mean, his work will forever be, but fuck. Yeah. So there's that. Anyway, that area was accreted by this jet stream that was flowing out of here, over here, converging, because there's undercurrents flowing this way that it's converging with. These are undercurrents below the crust. Undercurrents from over here, though, flowing this way, underneath Florida, through it, creating its network of aquifers and all of its freshwater supply. That is the springs and everything in Florida, definitely related to the undercurrent flowing through and basically cutting across, like cutting. This section used to bond, like chemically bond North America to South America in a more physically connected way, but as the currents divided the single landmass of continental crust that was just fully conjoined as a sphere of the surface of the earth. The floodwaters cut that apart, and the crust moved apart. As it did that, it created basically, or it revealed. I don't know if it created or revealed. Probably generally created because it's a product of where the process began, but also using pre-existing energetic frameworks of the earth, so probably also based on an actual pre-existing location where energy was more like permanently there long, like it was just the suitable place, maybe, I don't know. But they were bonded and even are still bonded in this region, where South America's underlayer is supporting other, like Cuba. This material of high magnetic intensity down here is literally missing from South America. It's just like, instead of this, we just have this straight line across and a bunch of blue, low intensity, and then up here we've got this straight line across and kind of like weird divide to it, like something happened. And then just a general shape that very much mimics this shape, because this was supporting under South America and it moved off and remained attached to Florida instead, through Florida to North America. So the undercrust, like here, this region is actually literally from underneath South America here in the process as well. Okay, let's go back to this because I'm kind of tangenting a little too much, and I really haven't gotten to the coolest parts of this. Although the tangents will probably help make sense of what I'm getting at. So, there's this one. Instead of just this one, that is applying a pressure point like here. Pressure point one here. Another one here that's maybe generally like pointing to this location. Another lobe that's kind of coming off of Hudson Bay. But if we look like here, this one, like going here, specifically this structure, and like here, the way that, like maybe there's a kind of, I don't quite see it completely, but I could see maybe, like, based on these, the way these are like radiating outward, that maybe there's some kind of boundary, although it still does it somewhat over there, so it doesn't look like it necessarily is as clear as like this very tip going and just pointing over here and pointing generally over that way. And maybe also with some bend back if we consider how other structures seem to do that, like over here. And just shallograms. It's kind of doing shallogram type things. Like the lobe of the ammonite. Okay, so anyway, so I said, wait a minute, there's a straight line here, pretty much. If I kind of go like this, boop, like this, alright, and then like down here too, and then just kind of right to the outer edge of this inner core nucleus region of the eddy. I don't know if that's where like a nucleus of the overall Ammonite was, and it wasn't quite centered over here, it was more over here. Because it was kind of like using the support of this backstop boundary that it was eroding into the material of to create this backstop. Maybe the current physically went around this way and just out that way enough that it joined some other lobe type thing. So we're kind of seeing, instead of like a boundary up here, kind of a flame overall with this nucleus thing. So I said, in the first image below, the large dominant eddy centered on Hudson Bay also had its own flame flower petal shaped structure which appears to have overwhelmed other currents at their central point overwhelmed, like, and played a major role in the formation of the Northern Rockies, although I was mistaken on the Northern Rockies. Let me find it. It's actually Mackenzie Mountains, I meant. Northern Rocky Mountains are, and at Laird Basin here, this opening. Mackenzie is up here, so we're looking up here. Here's the Great Bear Lake, which is the point there that it seems to be coming out of generally. So like a wide current, not just like a narrow current, but a wide that holds this boundary over here generally. And then possibly over here, I don't know, it might also kind of deflect up this way, but I'm thinking it continues that way because of reasons that we're going to get into. I was looking at these fault lines, like maybe, I don't know how a current going across this way would have like that structure there of the Tintina fault involved in it. There's certainly currents going through here, possibly at a depth that this current is also going through, but at a higher, like on the surface and down into the earth, like actually in. And another current under the crust is going underneath, but propagating upward, relating to this area's path here, going through here, propagating upward, though possibly where above the surface there's more so here, and under the surface maybe it was another current that went through this way more so, that like started to kind of cut up and out of the surface over here, like physically out, like erupting out even, like cutting these fault lines but erupting out of them and then traveling down them, pew, to then erode and shape things. Like this current is hugely important, right? The Rocky Mountain Trench is a critical element of how the earth was shaped in North America, and really a large amount. The Chicxulub, this relates to Chicxulub, this relates to South America. This is no like casual current. This thing is flowing through Sage Wall area, making it through Bighorn Basin region, moving mountains, shaping them, going across over here, holding this boundary here, through here, and then just vibrating along the boundary over here to go down here and along this other current that's going this way, so along this way. But there's this the pressures out here that I guess it doesn't really flow alone, like it's flowing with other currents, so it's kind of merging with it as it gets further south, I guess. It seems like it's less over here, like this is happening because the currents over here are not merging with the currents over here. There's pressure, their flows are large amounts of pressure, so it effectively flows out this way, not just in an eddy this way, because it's like if you twirl something, like it wants to fly away. As this eddy rotates, it's applying an outward pressure, but then as the flow gets away from the eddy over here, it's pretty much just flowing relative to this eddy, so it doesn't have that same outward pressure in this region, especially, so it starts to merge with this other current that's flowing in the same direction but not the same current, like it's essentially flowing into the eddy, bouncing off it and going down this way instead, because there's this huge eddy, and then it bounces again off of the pressure at Michigan, like across from it, bounces off and redirects it down the straight this way, possibly bounces again here for some reason. It actually hits something more system-like that it deflects from the pressures, possibly down here, getting closer to like this point. It looks like it's very much pointing at this. Like if we just go like this, boop, up to here, boop. Even draw it further, way up there. Not quite in line with the beginning anymore, but pretty good. So it looks like it's possibly generally currents flowing out of here that are going up here, but then have a pressure at this kind of possibly another eddy center that was generally here, that then some of it went this way, and its center applied a pressure through this way, that then as this current went down between, like this pressure pushed it outward this way, so even though it's flowing to the right, and then this pressure pushed it down in like an equilibrium, but then it's flowing directly and at this, possibly even contributing to it. Maybe there's actually, I think it's going this way though, because it's going out here, going across this way, out here going this way, like it split there, kind of like it did in over here, where this current is flowing down and it splits, goes left and right off of this. Also split here. Some went this way though. Most went this way, really. But it does look like possibly related. Okay, so let's keep going though. In the formation of Mackenzie Mountains. Further, its southern outer boundary here, where pressures build up, where currents are highest. So because it's the outer boundary, imagine there's a body of water, some fluid, and there's a rigid boundary, and you shove the water, like generally into, but along the boundary. Like, because the water is compressing, it's squeezing out a current along the resistance of the boundary. So the boundary actually leads to a higher flow rate along it. So it's more able to penetrate resistance at the boundary than like arbitrarily at some like random point not at a boundary. So if it's going to break through, it's either through the center where the two boundaries collide, or along a boundary itself without even reaching the other boundary, and then that. So in both instances, we have that happening where there's breaking through over here, it seems, and breaking through here, where it seems like this flow over here could have theoretically overwhelmed this flow out from Hudson Bay going across this way. And if that happened, it would basically be like turning the valve. This section would have continued up and blocked off because current on the western side in Alaska would have pushed in a boundary against the outflow current, which would have compressed material and basically made mountains. But the valve, boop, is the other way, or I guess this way, where the on switch for which direction current was flowing in this location is outward this way, seemingly. And if we go like this, so we got this section, we got here, we got here, we got basically this straight line thing. If we go like here to here, and then kind of extend it. Pretty well centered in like this, and then like this over here maybe. It's kind of, this one looks kind of busted up and like not quite because of the current flows that were over here just eroding through, I guess. So it's hard to see, but it looks like maybe generally it was trying to form. Like what was going on over here might have overwhelmed this boundary, this segment, to make it deformed somewhat, so it doesn't have so nice of an arc. Where this side, this is the dominant system, and this is the recessive system. This side is probably more so an eddy that was at the North Pole, literally forming it, like compressing it, forming it. An eddy here that was possibly the largest on Earth, or the second largest after the one centered on Antarctica, then maybe. I don't know. My thought is there was probably two largest eddies in the flood. There were many eddies that formed, but two largest eddies ended up forming, and they behaved as the positions of the poles. And as that process unfolded, it physically started to create a pole up here at an eddy point that then spawned an eddy over here, that spawned an eddy over here, that spawned an eddy over here, and chained through eddy over here. Maybe there was one here. I'm not completely sure about that one. A large eddy here between these that seem more casual, like just a bulk material, more maybe not equatorial, just something bulk that kind of was so much material that it wasn't flowing as fast, and it was kind of holding just a bulk amount of material of the water. Where nearer to the North Pole, there were eddies here, eddy here, eddy here, eddy here, eddy here, eddy over here, eddies all down here. There's rotation of the crust and technical papers related to the eddies in this area for certain, probably everywhere if we really start to look into like where there's rotation and when, and like to really and recognize that's caused by an eddy of water current that was happening there at that time. That then is blah 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 blah, assuming it's from 541 million to present, basically geologically dated. Okay, but so we've got this line now, and we can kind of just extend it again. I don't want to not. Okay, extended. Okay, let's just make sure on that boundary up there. Okay. Okay, so we got this boundary, we got this boundary, we got this point pretty good. We can maybe extend this and redo that, I guess, just to kind of see how far it goes. Okay. Okay. That's good enough. So maybe a relationship to this boundary again, and this general nucleus, the nucleus of Hudson Bay area. Relationship through there to this point, along this boundary, and then we kind of enter this area where the Pacific really like blew up. A lot of shite was going on in the Pacific when the Earth expansion process was like really unfolding. Again, at the KT boundary and beyond is when the radius of the Earth greatly expanded, because before then the continents were conjoined. Any oceanic crust before then largely began underneath the continents and then moved out from under them as underlayers that basically they slid away from, and new supporting structures maybe formed. I'm not even sure if new structures really formed or if the currents kind of died off, because they were like literally like and this section was literally underneath this section, and Australia basically here, like pointing up that way, pointing up this way, with like a boundary over here, and going across this way, right here. This was over there, underneath the crust, with the mid-Pacific Mountains forming here. The New Madrid fault line caused by the removal of this material, because the mid-Pacific Mountains, which we were just looking at, formed here, and that material was in here, where the New Madrid fault line is made as a result of the Western Pacific sliding out from under North America, and these tails being retained on the mid-Pacific Mountain and dragon structure that was under North America. Okay, so then we got this. We follow it. Let's just do this. I also I said, okay, hold up. We got some boundaries here. That's probably relevant. Like, if it's going through here, it definitely is going here. So it doesn't seem like there's really resistance here that much that built up. So it to me, it kind of suggests it made it through. And this wall is a result of a current going through here, generally, which would mean there's an outer boundary to the current here, basically. And if we kind of extrapolate that further, maybe this is an outer boundary here, just kind of, you know, maybe it goes over here at some point. I don't know. That seems like another current, though, that crosses through here and goes around there. Although it might be closely related. But then it kind of fans out there and there along these paths is my suggestion so far. And then I just kind of said from that point over to there, over to essentially the pressure point where current flow was going along. Where are these? I'll find it. Here we go. 2 here, but along this path where these like eyeball type things are in a row. That was then propagating though behind the arc this way. Here we go. Behind the arc of Japan, etc. So kind of like coming down this way. So it seems like while undercurrent things are happening, there's also this going on, because there's definitely undercurrent things going on where there's currents flowing in this way, right into here, pushing in here. So maybe this current passes this other current pushing in here. And then fans out immediately. As soon as it passes that point of pressure from the jet stream related to this snow angel structure here with like a magnetic field, snow angel, trident, jet stream off the top, the splitting of the Yucatan Peninsula relating to this feature. Like this splitting. But this point's right there, right at this ammonite, which also points right at where it used to be, right here, the center of this. Notice all the circles. Circle, circle, bunch of circles. Bunch of circles. And then you can kind of see it here, circle, circle, over here kind of, here's one, and then the one under Australia. So Australia was here, was here, was here, was here, is here. This ammonite structure, as it decayed, it physically moved on the crust. Boop, 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 boop. As this process unfolded and moved it, where when it was over here, Papua New Guinea was facing this way and attached over here, but then it rotated as it went boop, 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 boop. It also rotated. I don't know if that's the exact path. If it did, this seems a little weird that it would go over here, bam, bam, bam. But it does seem like there is something. And the Ontong Java Plateau was once part of Manihiki and Hikarangi, and Ecuador has some Pinon formation from the Ontong Java Plateau because they all formed together, but adjacent to Ecuador before the Earth expanded. This was forming underneath, and underneath Australia, but the crust was being cut apart, so it was extending into adjacent crust. So this underneath Australia formation of the Ontong Java Plateau was putting its own material into Ecuador at a time, and then it got split apart by this decay product of Hawaii that came out over here, which is where the center of that snow angel is, and then a jet stream up this way that ended up bringing it here ultimately, even though here was along this trajectory up here, and then along in here, literally in through, which was actually over here through this way, where then it made its way over to this corner, boop, right here, North Pole, turns, gets lodged here in this location when this here was up here. So then the whole of this area of Russia moves away from this area of the crust, swings out this way, transports the sphere of Hawaii with it. And then it is here where now it is, interestingly, also in these currents. So my thought is, let's say the Philippines are generally in this area, and maybe they're even like this way, because there was a time the Philippines were in here, this section, northern Philippines here, this little boop was boop in here, literally this section in, and then this section extending outward, connected to Borneo, all one landmass, uneroded. It's just eroded substantially by this process at this point. But it was in there and it was facing this way relative to Borneo. And then Borneo was connected, or Philippines were connected here, Borneo here to Australia, with this region just boop closed in here connected to this segment. So this was rearranged like 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 in that angle. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Now it is not. And the Philippines got rotated. And I was thinking, it's kind of like if there's a current flow coming this way, shove it into this area, presumably interacting with another current that is leading to the Mariana Trench. Like part of its process is that it's leading to the Mariana Trench. Interacting with the current flow out this way, but then leading to the Mariana Trench. Which would mean it's a major contributor to rotating Philippines, to pushing Hawaii into this location right here at the largest caldera on Earth, at the time of the bend in the Hawaiian Emperor Seamount chain. So Hawaii, which formed as a sphere, rolls down this way, boom, runs into resistance, bends, runs into less resistance, but resistance bends again, and then finally breaks apart its outer shell, and the inner shell breaks apart over here, and it splays out the inner shell and rolls and comes to a stop where it even tilts over like like a rolling thing does. Like if you roll a quarter, it'll go straight, 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 and then it'll kind of start rolling to the side. It just starts rolling to the side at the end as it's losing momentum here, basically. But here, it's kind of just going along here, runs into resistance here, deflects off of it where it goes down here, bends again, second bend. So it's flowing this way, along basically this angle though, before the process expanded things, essentially. At the angle where it's running into this point in Philippines, like running into Philippines. Pushing along, participating in the movement of the Philippines, but then it runs into resistance here as it approaches the Philippines. Like, not approaches, but the resistance. Like, the Philippines were getting shoved into this resistance. So it's running into resistance. As it runs into the resistance that the Philippines begins to build up behind it by getting shoved into all this material, it then leads to a abrupt caldera formation and the bending of the Hawaiian sphere rolling. So that the sphere rolls to the side. But it's rolling, though, physically, not out in the middle here. Physically along boom, 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 and then off here pretty much is like the last of it here. Which I wonder, like, maybe it was actually as it was approaching over here, because they were over there. I don't know if it's possible if this all happened before the Pacific opened up substantially and the undercrust was able to do this in some way that's... What am I trying to look at? Oh, yeah. So that, theoretically, if Hawaii went there, it would have basically stopped around here. So imagine it's rolling, 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 and then it bends to the side at the end even this way. Like, it's kind of has the same thing going on. Dude, it, especially maybe if we consider some other, I don't know. I've thought about it going through through regions. I don't know with certainty. It looks like it could have passed through here. Like through here. Even. Like imagine it hits the North Pole here. Boom. Hits the North Pole. The whole Earth abruptly starts to rotate so that then it rolls away from the North Pole this way. Where it comes over here, which is actually at the time over here. But its motion is this way, ultimately. As the crust is moving, its physical motion relative to the underlying oceanic crust that is the continents are physically shifting on in this moment, perhaps. So essentially, even though it goes this way and goes this way over to here and then reaches this point where it then ends up being right here, and then this breaks apart and this goes over this way and the current flows are pushing it out, and the dude's splaying out there, and there's other currents going across as this is happening too across this way. Like across here. Oops. Just across, basically, from the mantle puncture hole location over here, across this way. And creating this, like, arc shape here, and a different arc here. It's like two wavelength arcs. Or waves. Two wavelength waves, and another Mariana Trench type thing over here. That's kind of... like, maybe this is more where it was happening. This... like, Hawaii was going this way. The Mariana Trench was forming over to the east of Hawaii, because it was going over here, as the Mariana Trench formed to the east of it. Cutting through, literally cutting. Here. Although that would suggest this point was like way over here. Let's just for funsies say this point to like here. 1832. Now let's say for funsies, this is probably not 1832. It looks way longer. This point basically to there. What about this one? What about this one? To the end. It's a similar length from the far end here, so maybe this point is really there. This is more related to here. The far end is maybe as it got to here. It went through, ran into resistance. Through, ran into resistance. Pushing, physically pushing the earth maybe, like forward, like into like this whole area. Possibly, like if you imagine, like it's almost like a recoil, like something hits, sitting there, something comes in, boom, smacks it, pushes in low, in, but there's all this earth backstopping it, and it literally pushes in to a point where the backstop of the earth recoils outward the other way, and like this unfolding of this segment of the earth happens, because these were not like this. They were connected across here. This was just zipped up. Boop. Like, boop. That's all. That's all. They were zipped up. And then it continued to be across here. Wait a minute. Across here. Across here. Oh, so this point of impact might have been very close to here. Before they spread. Because the Philippines were attached here, but then after the Philippines, I believe, like Borneo, it had, like the Indonesian archipelago was not there. It was more like in against this area, as ridiculous as that may seem. Like this arc relates to this arc, and like current flows maybe were like maybe Borneo kind of stretched in there. I don't know. if that makes any sense. Like in terms of like some accreted terrain happening. It's still a work in progress in Borneo. It's like you're trying to put a puzzle together and all the pieces are going together just fine, but like, oh, this one puzzle piece is really complex. What to do? Just keep thinking about it. That's what to do. It's not like the whole of everything is fundamentally wrong. Okay. So, what were we just talking about? I think we covered. I'll include these posts. Then I went on to say Hudson Bay was not the pole of the Earth. The pole was the North Pole. So we got this Hudson Bay, and then if we look at it like this, from the pole, so if we consider the pole to generally be this thing, which is really over here. But like, just looking around, it kind of, I feel like Greenland has some relationship to the pole in some energetic way, but it's kind of part of North America. But if we look, we got this line here, and line here again, still using the same things pretty much, but like different shapes now. We got pointing this way, down this way, generally just pointing over here, and then we got like flow here, so generally pointing this way. And then another one, which I talked about previously. So it looks like I drew a current going this way and around. So maybe this one wraps around. Goes around here, goes up and across, but then there's this pressure, this current going this way, where it just is overwhelmed. I don't know. Possibly that. I mean, it's possible these directions of arrows are maybe not all right. But generally an eddy thing here, and like it almost makes me think of like a raindrop shape, or like some kind of droplet coming off of the North Pole. This shape, like a droplet seeding off of the North Pole, though. If we kind of look over here, we got a droplet here. This one doesn't quite have the droplet shape, but then it makes me think of like Earth caves, different shapes of stalagmites or whatever, those things. Like droplets that are more like permanent though, and slowly build over time. In different shapes though. Sometimes connecting. But then there's this one. Then there's this one. Like another of these flower petal flower petal slash flame structures generally here, where this area with a general circle here, it's pretty subtle, but I think it even is there on the upper boundary. Like we can see this boundary pretty good. Over here we can kind of see boundaries, like it's not as clear over here. But then over here, which is kind of interesting, it looks like we can see like right there. Across this, maybe I'm too zoomed in. Across here, like right there. And then maybe there, so it's almost like a spiral. So there's like an eddy here as well, centered generally here, an eddy here. So eddy, directly adjacent. But this one is below this one, and it's kind of weirdly like the flame thing is all the way up here, and then the eddy is down here. Whereas this one, the flame thing, the eddy is kind of centered. And then this one, the flame thing, the eddy is actually at the top of it. Like before the flame thing practically is an eddy. So there's different like ways this can happen, like the eddy at certain locations dependent on the surroundings. So over here there was an eddy over here, eddy going on right here, and an eddy going on right here, overlapping one another. So instead of forming next to each other, it just formed underneath it, and like has a conduit path past it of this flame-like structure that extends longer down to the nucleus pretty much of this eddy, which was part of why Lake Baikal was etched by current flows that definitely are also propagating like generally this way into here to form Damodar Kund and Shallograms. So if we follow this, let's see. Maybe it relates to this then. Like if there's a current, let's just say hypothetically, there's some current that as I drew it in that one image, wherever it was, that it was going through here and out this way because of these other currents. Another current over here going across this way that runs into currents out here. It's getting pushed up into it, creating an eddy here, cutting across and doing these things. But the currents coming down are deflecting off of it here. Some of it goes this way, but some of it goes across, forming a general eddy here. What was I talking about? Oh yeah. So maybe this outlet like cuts through here. I forget exactly what I had to say about this. I definitely talked about it in a recent video, probably last 15 or 20 underground science videos, maybe last 10 even. I don't know which. Let's see. Habit. Ring of Fire. No. It might even be on the screen. It might be this one. Maybe one of these. Probably one of these in this area. One of those, if you care. I know it's kind of generic, but they're all really worth watching. As all my content is, but hey, I'm biased, right? Eddy here, though. Then I also did this. If we go like this. And look at this, like, flame structure. And its outer boundary, like, this way. Kind of going out there, and the inner outer boundary, like a multiple, one going there. And then a generally there, so, like, if we draw a line where we connect, say, this point to this point, like these two, this one generically chosen as like a general center, but really trying to connect this boundary and a, like this point right there, like some general point where this shape points at, and then we just kind of drag the structure, and then I'm gonna only look at the up here, not look at down there, and just kind of extend it. Okay, right there. And maybe see if that looks pretty good still. This side maybe not exactly right, but essentially the point is this thing, this pedal that is pointing down this way is really pointing very much at like the center. What is it called? What is the volcano here? Most dangerous volcanoes, Indonesia. Mount Merapi. Krakatoa. That's probably what I'm thinking of. Mount... what was it? Merapi. Yeah, that one's even... more... I was thinking more over here. Okay, let's see. Krakatoa. Yeah, that one. That's the one I was thinking of. Like, right at the center of the arc. Which has a literal arc shape here. Where current flow is flowing this way into resistance. Which that's why I said I believe it was resistance over here initially. And then it just kind of boop, moved off and off. And just like over here, where it rotated out and over, there's some rotation that happened. I don't know if that's utterly unreasonable. It's partly because I'm still trying to figure out what the hell happened with the Indonesian archipelago. It does kind of have some semblance of similarities. It's hard to totally abandon the potential. It just feels right when I think about it, and as ridiculous as it is. I mean, what do I care what people think at this point? Whatever's true is true. It seems right. I don't want to say it's right. Hawaii was a sphere. That I'm confident about. It sounds ridiculous. That one, and not many of, like, Ammonite under Australia, many of those things have worked out enough that I can really just say them and not feel like I've made a false claim. This Borneo, Indonesian archipelago, a budding resistance of India, or maybe it was more like turned like over here, more this way, and more like And then it got shoved away, like, with these flows out of here. Like, physically pushed it over, bonded it, sealed the deal. Ba-da-ba-da-ba. Okay, guys. Even though I just started that, maybe I should stop. Yeah, so that's what's going on. We could definitely go further. Like, there's another one that maybe points generally to here then, or didn't quite get through the resistance and instead, like, led to resistance or formed a counter to resistance. Like, because there was pressure here, maybe it contributed to forming some sort of quadrant around the eddy at the North Pole that then formed repetitive quadrants. Like one maybe here. That's like a miniature one. Like this, this shape, this shape, this shape. Just generally like a miniature Europe, or not even Europe, whatever. Eastern Europe, Western Asia, whatever this is. I think of both, but this area kind of behaving like a miniature North America that didn't actually fracture. So it's possible if the Earth had expanded more, it could have eroded through here, created like a miniature continent, truly out of Europe. But instead of keeping it conjoined to Asia, like actually eroded it out to be like a miniature North America. But it didn't. Possibly also that had it done that, maybe North America would not have its shape, and they all like for the energy for this to have turned into like the shape of North America would almost like shift everything to a different energy level, so that like the current flows that were present at North America would have like changed form, like those resonance videos of the water droplets and sand and all that are just like changing form at different resonances. Different resonances maybe could have created a North America miniature version in Europe, and maybe changed North America to be some other shape and etc., where the whole Earth would have looked a little different, but still had like the same shapes because of some aspect of the process that's iterative, where it was doing the same thing on both sides here, one large, one small, and etc. Like it can just it could snowball into another stage essentially, but did not. Kind of like how shallograms at times could have features like in actual ammonites this way, but did not, etc. Okay, dudes. Till next time, thanks for watching. See ya. Peace out.